This is the Round Table, a talk show brought to you by the Glastonbury Goddess Conference. In this circle, the priestesses of the ceremonial circle, the weavers of our annual gathering, talk about pivotal topics about our community, spirituality, and goddess. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome once again to the Round Table. It's a pleasure to be here today with a full room of ceremonialists from the Glastonbury Goddess Conference. So please welcome Caroline Stevens. Say hi.
Hi.
Marian Brigantia.
Hi.
𝗕𝗘𝗏𝗘𝗙𝗧𝗔𝗡𝗘.
Hello.
And her flowers. Sophia.
Hi.
Blanton, sorry. And Sophia Blanton is here from the US. So big round of applause for her because she's here, but it's 4:30 in the morning and it's a long way to the top if you want a priestess really well. So, and 𝗕𝗘𝗏𝗘𝗙 Fox, our rockstar priestess here today.
Hi.
So today it's a special Beltane edition. So happy Beltane, blessed Beltane to everyone who's been celebrating, who's still celebrating. We are still in the mood for love. We're still in that zone of air. So, and our episode today is Excuse My Beltane, episode 18. 18, it's a lot of them. We are live right now on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're there, please do comment. We'll be here. Say hi. Say what you're thinking about it. We'll be commenting on it. Today's questions are digging deep in the realm of the shame game around sex censorship and sex and sexuality and all that pertains to that area. So where is sex censorship leading us as a society? How much does public puritanism endanger the growth of our emotional and sexual maturity? Why are we still playing hide and seek with the natural aspects of our human experience, which sex is indeed part of? And as spiritual practitioners, how much of the work to reach the depths of sacredness and intimacy is influenced and encumbered by the public shame game? These are just a few of the questions we'll be discussing today. And I will start with a question for Sophia, which is for the first time in the panel. So you'll be our gate opener, way shower today. So have you ever experienced in your life as a spiritual practitioner, as a priestess, let's say a challenge in that? So has there been a time where you thought, oh my goodness, I really wish I could go deeper with this intimacy or sexual or just intimacy work with this person, with this circle, but I have so much things to do before we get to the actual thing, because we need to work on the shame before, we need to work on the freedom before. What's your experience? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that when we're working within a circle, we're working within a community, everyone is bringing their personal history to the table. And we're living at a time right now, I really think, where, especially in the post-pandemic times, folks are really just cut off from their bodies anyways. I see that a lot. I see that there are, it's like there's emotional issues that are coming to the table. There are emotional histories. There are histories around how people view their bodies, how people view their worth, especially for women that come to circle. So I think, we have to be really sensitive, and we have to just provide pathways for people to get in touch with themselves and their own issues before we can hope to bring them into any level of deeper participation or discourse in this more spiritual way. There's lots of layers to be peeled back from the onion, and I think we have to just be really gentle and very very welcoming and hold space for everybody.
And And how much of that is in your view, but also please do join in the conversation. When we get to that part of public shame, that puritanism, how much is that actually about sex, and how much is the fear of intimacy? Because I think that's another very important aspect of it. I mean, we might think it's about the sexual part of it, but then in the end, we're much more scared of hugging people who we want to have sex with them at some point. So is that part of is that puritanism actually pointing to the sex, so to shame people, to hide, to make that a taboo? But what we're really watching is the finger pointing towards the intimacy. So we want to, that kind of puritanism wants to create a society where the Demi, please.
Isn't sex the deepest form of intimacy anyway, though? So everything on the scale goes towards complete intimacy and union and complete vulnerability in sex. And the thing with what's happening in the modern world is, because of that fear of intimacy, the intimate part has been taken out of sex, and wanting that romance and spiritual connection and that deep seeing and that deeply being seen and deeply being loved and being able to be vulnerable and open to fully receive from a partner, that's the bit that has been shut down. And sex has been seen as it's just a transactional physical thing where you get something, and the intimacy has been taken out of sex. So we have this world where sex is kind of a commodity, or it's a thing, and we're just very nicely forgetting that sex is actually the ultimate act of intimacy.
I love that, Demi. I really can hear that. Sorry, someone else was saying something as well at the same time. No? Okay. Yeah, I think, sex is transactional and often very selfish in the wounding patterns that you were also talking into, Sophia, And so I think there's this linking between the sexual and the intimate, including touch, where it's not actually so much about puritanism, it's more about wounding and people shielding around that. And we have to actually be very trauma informed and trauma involved when we are working with this. And I think at Beltane, which is what the topic of today is really hooked around, the exuberance and the wild energy of this pagan festival in relation to the absolute bursting of beauty and life and fertility and sexuality in all of nature, which is therefore also happening in our body, can be celebrated in really a deliciously open way that involves the sexual as intimacy, but also as this wild celebration of life. And that can at the same time be very triggering, and it's very dangerous for controlling status quo systems like political systems or religious systems, who will therefore absolutely bring in the puritanical ideas of, which on the one hand could be seen as protection towards those wounding places and the shielded places, that therefore the shielded survival strategies that therefore are in place, and at the same time contribute to the intimacy being taken out of sex, as Demi said, and then shame the actual wild, alive, beautiful, delicious exuberance. So I think it's such a mix. It can be so triggering, it's so celebratory, it's so beautiful, and at the same time, it's trying to be controlled for other reasons that are not actually about our safekeeping or about trauma involved relationship to this energy.
I think there's so many layers, aren't there?
As well. Sorry, 𝗓𝗔 is here.
Oh, yes.
Hey.
Hey, folks.
Hey.
Go, Caroline.
Yeah, so many layers. I wanted to speak into something that Sophia said as well around the body. I think just there's been a moving forward, certainly in the UK, there's been a moving forwards in some respects, but also there's still so much work to do in terms of body image, in terms of showing up and having and the shame that people still feel and experience, and I witness it even when I go on holiday. Naked flesh is something to wow, it's a breast. We see it on Facebook with artwork as well. It's there's so much to uncover before we even get into the intimacy and the sexuality of it. So there's so many layers. It's a deep wounding that needs to be worked on and healed in so many individuals, and in society as a whole, in schools and all of it. Witnessing a teenage daughter growing up with social media, the pain of comparison has been awful. Yeah, to see that, and so much to hold. So there's so many levels that need to. Have we lost our host, or is he just hiding?
No, he's hidden, I think. I think also
I'm talking, but we might not be there. We are here.
I also think there's a two sides of this story. It's like you kind of touched on that, Caroline, is that there is like the shame and the conditioning and the Puritan thing that has come into in your own criticism about body, about how relationship have to be, about all these things on top, or maybe because of all the things that come from the outside. So it's like there's a double whammy really that you. And I think in the priestess training, at least the one that I teach, is that it is really about empowering that inner strength, that inner working through the wounding of shame and fear as well, and about comparison, as you said, Caroline. That to strengthen that inner self-image of body, of the wildness, what Katinka was talking about, embracing the wildness, all these things. I think in my training, that's more that is the focus. I'm not even going, I know, in the Rhiannon training, which I've done, you go also into the more relationship parts, but in my training, we don't even get there, because there's so much to work from in the inner experience of sexuality and the inner experience of self-image and self-love. I mean, those are already three such big topics that could be a whole training in itself.
Sadhu, welcome to the panel. We will love to weave you into this conversation. And so I introduce another bit that I think it's important. In the world that surrounds us, we are constantly bombarded with the sexual imagery. So advertising is using sex full time. Sex sells. That's a powerful marketing sentence that I do not agree with, but it does ultimately. So we are surrounded by the imagery of sex. The point is that sex is always used as a taboo, as something forbidden. So I think through time, what happened is that the sexual image used as forbidden, gave also the message, the masses, that it is forbidden in a way. So it became this kind of esoteric world. And while I think, Sadhu, you can bring in your experience in this. Well, I think it's also a mundane thing. It's a sacred thing when you are united with somebody. Well, we're making a big deal out of something that is really natural for us to do, and it becomes this whole esoteric and very mysterious and taboo thing. Well, it's not. Well, we have television programs full of killing and war at all times. That's common for us. Well, it's uncommon to talk about endometriosis or anything related to our genitalia or anything related to sex, which is really weird. Sadhu, what is your experience in that as a practitioner, as a priest? How do you approach the fact that you have to go through a very perilous and delicate road with the person you bring into your circles about the censorship and the shame that surrounds sex?
Yeah, I do think in many of our cultures in the world, we are getting better at talking about real sex, but that's still definitely a huge challenge for people. To talk about what sex really is, and to talk about sex from an authentic place, and I mean, which is massively tied to body image and what people see as sexually desirable. And I think for me, like so much of my work is about bringing people back to felt experience and valuing felt experience, because I think that's what gets lost. And when you talk about sex being forbidden, you've got this piece of, many people I work with have this idea that, I'm not going to get to really have the sex I want. That sex is, this people who get to have the sex they want are kind of, that these like magazine type bodies and with the Hollywood lifestyle or whatever it is, whatever stereotype they're carrying. So there can be this kind of removal from sex as something, like you're saying, that is actually a glorious part of everyday experience in relationship, and something we can share with human beings. And big part of my work is bringing people back to felt experience, recognizing that they can feel so much in themselves, and then to move from there and to share from felt experience. And for me, really good sex, it's very little about how we look, very little, and it's so much about how we feel.
Yes, and that brings us back to that intimacy aspect of our sexuality and sex that Demi really brought in earlier on, And I think that shame, if we've been shamed for our own freedom in our sexual energy, or through the woundings that have happened to us in our society, where we're in this extreme distortion of what sexuality actually is, the magnetism and the repulsion that are kind of working around that particular energy, in the puritanism actually, and in the removing from intimacy, removing from sacred, but also removing from joyous freedom, really. So any of the shame bits that sit there associated with this can find a very good raison d'etre by saying, oh, well, it's forbidden by some god, or it's the moral codes of, and have actually nothing to do with the authentic truth of the body, or indeed the care of the intimacy of our heart, that is not just about us getting our pleasure, but about the other people or person that we are engaging with. So sexuality and sex, of course, first and foremost with yourself, and then with others. So this whole thing of how do we honor that? How do we work with the shame? And shame has actually, in its healthy form, a very important function around exactly these core issues of the care for yourself and others within a society or tribal community setting. And as we are a tribal creature, this is part of the makeup of our social, the social parts of our brain, actually. So the shame in itself is not a bad thing. It's just been used and misused, and it's become very tangled, hasn't it? And then exactly what you're speaking into, this removing from the body, because only the mind or only the spirit is a good thing and the body is a terrible thing. And within the whole goddess spirituality, this is absolutely fundamentally what we're trying to do differently and what we're reclaiming.
Yeah.
I want to involve a bit more as well. Following up to Katinka's point, it's about the goddess spirituality, but also what you're trying to do with constantly with the Goddess Conference. The Goddess Conference, again, runs from the 29th of July to the 3rd of August. Please do come. But aside from that, I want to honor deeply Sophia and Demi, who are here today, and they are part of the directional circles. The directional circles are a fundamental part of this conference. They are the circles where the people coming to the conference get to share, get to experience group and community in a profound way. They get to share their experience as the week goes by. And both Sophia and Demi do a groundbreaking job at what they do, because Demi is our rockstar priestess, and she is challenging with every single newsletter, mind you, not only the archetypes of womanhood in a way, but also the archetypes of what a priestess is and what Avalon is, or what 𝗲𝗓𝗓 is. And she's challenging that with every single newsletter. Please follow her social medias and programs. And Sophia as well. I love the way Sophia is challenging the very essence of what being a woman and being a dancer, of being a priestess on social media is, because you're exposing as much as the goodness and beauty of it, as well as when you feel weak, when you feel stressed, when you feel, and that's deeply human, and I think that's deeply empowering for all the women and the people following me, for me as well. So Does it ever happens to you, Sophia and Demi, that you don't feel like, the powerhouse water dancer priestess or the rockstar priestess when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh shit? So how do you go through it? Are there any places relating to what we're saying where you are like, I shall be challenging this, I shall be challenging the patriarchy, the shame, that's really not the day to do that, not today? How do you feel? What do you do when you feel like that, when you are like not superheroes like you are, but you're like one of us? When I wake up in the morning, we're like, oh, I need to do that. How do
I
you
am never a rock star priestess in the morning. Ever. I wake up and I never ever remember like, oh, I want to do priestess practice. Oh, I want to do this amazing thing. Oh, this is the thing I want to do with my life. All I want to do is sit there, scroll my phone, stare at the wall, do nothing every morning, every single morning. And then it's a process of seducing myself back into, oh, Demi, you quite like dancing. You should do some. Oh, you like yoga. Maybe you should do some. Like mothering myself every morning because I am just incapable of doing it in morning Demi mode. But it takes, I think the thing with a spiritual path is that the whole point of it is every single second is about remembrance. And the whole point of being human is that we forget who we are and we forget what we are. And I forget that, like, at times, sometimes I can be this, like, powerful, like, Shakti goddess who awakens everyone around them by looking at them. And other times I'm just this goblin that hides in my house and doesn't ever want to look at anyone ever again. And it's always that place of forgetting, this is what I truly am. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. And coming back into remembrance of it. And I think that's... the priestess path isn't actually that glamorous. It's just remembering again and again, oh, I'm not doing the thing I want to do. Okay, cool. Let's try again. Oh, I really like this, but I'm doing this instead. Okay, let's try again. So it's pretty humbling. It's not very glamorous. It's very much... it is always being in touch with your shadows and all the things and being aware of, oh, this isn't what I want to be doing. And I can see it because I'm a priestess and it's my job to see things as they are. God damn it.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophia, have you ever been shamed in...
Hang on, Sophia.
Well, I think that over time, I've really, really learned that the less in touch we are with our own levels of resistance, the longer processes tend to be. So, in my own personal development, and of course, being a priestess and being an artist, being a movement artist, those are all super intertwined for me. And over time, I've really learned that the more I censor myself, the more I shame myself, the more I bury myself in the I shoulds, or I shouldn't be this way, or oh, how must I be coming off to others? The more that I don't sit with my resistances and try to give them voice and let them bring up the wisdom that they're trying to bring up, because often, like, the answer is looking at us straight in the face, but we have this, we have so much internal resistance. And so I have really tried, especially in recent times, and we talk so much about authenticity, like, what does it mean to be authentic? Well, if we don't bring our whole selves to the table, warts and all, fears, inner dissonances, how can we hope to process life in a healthy way and to engage life in a healthy way and to engage the process of evolution. So, I've faced up to, as I said in the beginning, it's been a really, really challenging year. But it was partially challenging because of my own inner resistance to the changes that were taking place around me. And here in the States, we've been going through a lot of changes. So it's a highly charged collective. And, we live in the moment right now when I don't think there's anyone here whose inner life is not deeply affected by the collective as well. So, yeah. So I'm just I'm finally allowing myself. I've spent a lifetime holding space and allowing for others, and now I'm allowing myself as well.
Okay, that's bravo. That takes bravery. And also, I want to show you another brave picture, which is this. Sorry, Sadhu, I hope you like it, but it's yours. And I want to show this because it's the way Sadhu does it. It is really brave because we're now in a spiritual community. I think we're more used to talk about, red tents and a bit of sexuality, but the way Sadhu does it, it's unapologetic, it's authentic, and it's beautifully empowering. And I think it defeats all the time you publish something and you're out with an event. You kind of defeat and you challenge as well the archetypes that are around the way we should be talking about intimacy and sex. And I love the way you challenge that without saying, and now I will be challenged. You just do it. Just go for it. And it's so authentic. I think this is the authenticity, Sophia, I was actually talking about. You talk the talk, you walk the walk, and the way you do that, it's empowering and beautiful. Was there ever a time in your life, though, where you were like, I don't know if I can really do that? And how did you overcome that? How did you bring yourself to do that? Or were you just always this beautiful embodiment of wisdom and freedom? How was it for you?
Well, I definitely have my journey too, Andrea. For me, at the same time, I feel like talking about sex has always been something very natural for me. And this is also something that I work with people to find their natural way of talking about it, because my way of talking about sex is not anybody else's way of talking about sex. And I think we have to, really give ourselves license to find that and to feel that in our body. But no, I was totally a closeted gay boy growing up. So I definitely felt a lot of oppression around my expression of my sexuality, and then I had a lot of kind of experimental friends in my early teens, like from about 13, 14, 15, 16 onward, and just that was always a self-expression became more and more of a core value of mine, and I let a lot of things go, friendships and things to value that more and more in my life, which has also been really challenging as well. But very, very important to me. I think that's such a key part for all of us to really find our own journey of self-expression, and how we can express ourselves as sexual beings, and to recognize that isn't the same for everybody, and it's not just a matter of being like, this person is very sexually expressive, so I can just copy paste that. It really has to come from this inner journey and relating to our body, and coming back to felt experience, how we feel in ourselves. And for me, I spent a lot of my childhood not feeling great in my body, so that also became a big value of mine, especially in my latter teens, getting into yoga and meditation to feel really at home in myself and my body, and at home in my sexuality ultimately.
I don't want to take anything of what you said away, Sadhu, but I do also think that when you're a woman, it's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I think when women are, openly, I'm talking social media especially, openly showing, their sexuality, their sensuality, it is not so looked upon so favorably, I think. than it is with men. I might be wrong, but that's my opinion. And Caroline, she already mentioned art. We know, for instance, one of our beautiful leader of the market, 𝗕𝗘𝗥𝗘𝗕, she does art. And that's art. That's not even female bodies as human bodies, but that's art, which has been, openly sexual for centuries. And she is, censored constantly on social media. And
they're not actually necessarily sexual. They're just naked bodies.
Yeah.
That's paint. There's nothing specifically sexual about it. And she has totally been shadow banned, and properly banned on social media.
Yeah. And it's interesting how that, I think there's a different look at, I don't know if your experiences are of the other women, and maybe also Sadhu and Andrea, but I think there is definitely this judgment to be gentle and condemnation really of the female body, maybe more than the male.
I think it's of course we all know it's not a competition who has it worse, but I think the shame focuses on different things. So for women's bodies and women's sexuality expressed in the world and on social media and telly, it's because women's bodies have been seen as a product for consumption. So women's bodies used to sell this, and when we are selling ourselves, like you look at every single pop star and you read like the backgrounds of like Nicki Minaj and stuff, a lot of them have said at some point, I wish I hadn't done what everyone had said and promoted myself so sexually, because that took over everything. And it's the sexuality and the sexual body, that bit of feminine sexuality, which is so lusted for and wanted for, and then hated at the same time, and you have to look a particular way. But on the flip side, male sexuality, this is coming from my lens as a woman who's grown up as a woman in the world, male sexuality isn't actually expressed very much in the internet world, in any of the world. And if it is, I feel like, because we're not used to it, there is such a horrific overcurrent of male sexuality as violence, which has come from patriarchy, which is really damaging to women and men, and is a huge part, I believe, of why there is so much difficulty stepping into intimacy, because we associate male sexuality so often, and anyone can disagree with me, that's totally fine, with violence so often, that even for men, we don't see many places of gentle, loving, self-expressed sexuality, and that is almost alien. And that's scary, because that's coming back to this part of sexuality, which is about intimacy and giving and receiving. And the main way that the patriarchy in history has talked about male sexuality, and the way women are taught about male sexuality, which is, I believe, why we have a lot of struggles with TERF stuff and trans and stuff, is that we are taught that male sexuality is inherently violent and it's dominating. So when there is someone like Sadhu who's coming out and saying, here I am in the ecstasy of sexuality, I am in the softness, I am in the intimacy, I am in the depth, that is why Sadhu stuff and anyone who is representing that edge is so challenging and revolutionary and difficult for everybody to kind of accept, because it doesn't look like what we've been taught male sexuality is. And it is the big fear of that masculine sexuality, which is absolute nonsense, because I am 100,000% sure that every man in the world truly wants love and intimacy and sweetness and cuteness and everything that everybody wants. But they're taught that that's not what it is to be man, and that's not what it is to be sexual. So when someone is honestly saying, look, it's lovely, would you like some loveliness? It's so challenging and it's hard. And also kind of the point of being a priestess or a priest it is not to be liked, it is to be challenged. And no matter what you do, you're always going to be challenging someone, and someone's not going to like it. But
So true.
I feel like the shame and the fear of representing male sexuality is in a different place, but it is there, and it is thick, and it is heavy, and we're still coming out of this horrible, like, male, like, this is embedded in my brain, and I have the sweetest, most gentle, cutest partner in the entire world. This embedded belief of male sexuality is like not intimate and violence, and I don't know where that's come from or why that's there, and not true on any freaking level, but it is one of those things that we are clearing and digging out of the collective unconsciousness around sexuality. What do you think, Maddie?
These are such old, deeply rooted narratives that, for some decades we've been in this sort of sexual revolution, but they're not suddenly gone. Like, slut shaming is still such a deep part of the of our cultural narrative, and it's not just going to go. And for men, the kind of the imprint to be kind of a fuck machine when it comes to sex is it's still there in men, for sure.
Absolutely. And that performance anxiety that can come with that, which is not the same in general terms in feminine sexuality. And these ideas, these conditioned ideas about what masculine is and what feminine is, and what, feminine sexuality is certainly not all soft and lovely. There is a wild hunger there too, or can be, So absolutely, I agree 100% with what you bring in there, Demi. It's so great, really. I also think there's an objectification of nudity, and particularly of sexuality in a shape that we as society think is desirable and beautiful on both sides of the spectrum. I hear women constantly going on about what actor or footballer or whatever, the male models that are used for perfume or underwear advertisement. It's exactly the same as with the feminine images on social media out there. And we actually behave in the same way that we don't like to be behaved around ourselves. We are guilty of this objectification of bodies and sexual energies of people, whatever shape or form they're in. And then we're conditioned to think this is what... And then we have the layers of fear and shame and age-old imprintings that may actually not even be part of our body experience in this lifetime. So this is a huge kettle of fish, as we would say, to deal with. And I think we need to just become really honest with ourselves about where those places in us are, and look at them and go like, like, I can't remember who said, what do I actually want? What do I actually want to, I think it was you, Demi, what do I actually want, around this? And how do we actually want to engage in the world? And then how do we stand against the abuse of power over systems that use sex and sexual energy to dominate and to feel a little bit more powerful and to play out these wounding patterns, Yeah, it's a big one. Oh, there's a big comment, I think.
We have a comment from 𝗖𝗓𝗡𝗙, which is, I think it depends on how the boy child was raised. I personally don't recognize what you're stating about male sexuality. I am masculine but not violent or aggressive. I can be passionate without being violent, and I don't find other men find my path odd or different. Very lucky.
100% agree, and like, the men I know in my life are wonderful, and they are gentle and they are sweet, and I believe that this is the true current of men. And we have this myth and this lie that male sexuality is violent and domineering, and it's a story, it's a spell, it's not the truth at all, and it isn't reflected in the lives of like any of the men that I have personally been with in relationship. And yet it is still a story and a myth that informs how people treat men, how women treat men, how men treat themselves, how especially all the young men today who are being tricked into all that Andrew Tate nonsense. They are fed this story and this myth that comes from what some people think masculinity is today, and I think more importantly the patriarchal history. It's not been great for men or women under patriarchy for a long time. It's a story and a myth, and it's not truly representative of what male sexuality is in any way, shape, or form. But it's like we can have this idea of what something is, and the lie is so strong that it affects the way we talk to each other, the way we speak to each other, the way people will treat men or see men, or have their own, will affect their own relationships with men based on this lie about male sexuality being inherently violent and dominant. I have been very lucky, and I have never experienced that in my life, other than like being groped by gross men at nightclubs, which I think is an experience every 18-year-old girl has had. But I know that so many men, and I really believe the heart of men is everybody wants the same sweetness and kindness and tenderness and loveliness and sexual, just everyone's a cutie. That's my deepest belief.
I think that's what the word that Ian was bringing in there, which I think is a very good word, is passionate.
Yeah.
And I think if we get away from male sexuality and female sexuality and actually just talk about human sexuality, because it takes this conditioning exactly that you're speaking into there, Demi, and that Ian was speaking into as well, out of it. It is a conditioning to say it's this or that. And there are a lot of people who have experienced the violence of sexual power over actions, non-consensual events. And this is part of the reality of the world. And that is not that all men, and it is not that it is just men. It can also be experienced from the feminine towards the masculine. It is there as part of the great shadow of the distortion of sexuality. And it has to be acknowledged that it is there, you know. And so our human sexuality is not like that, but our shadow around our sexuality in our society is. And that influences all our conditioning.
Thank you.
I think that's really. We have a closing comment from Ian, which is, I go into schools to teach young boys that what is being given to them is mainstream pornography, isn't how we behave sexually. Thank you, Ian, for that. It's true.
Yes.
And that the young girls shouldn't feel pressured to act out what is being sold to them as sex. It's dominant aggression, not sexual exploitation.
Yes, absolutely.
Hallelujah.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Ian.
We have comments of love, beautiful expressed by Vedem and others, by Luna Silver, and also our fellow priestess Stephanie Allison Shudel. Hi, loves. Hi, darling. Hello. It's beautiful to see the display of love we have today in this call. A huge panel, a lot of people all around us celebrating this communion, this unity, this community, also having very different sometimes takes on things, but coming together to celebrate something, to discuss something. And that's what will happen at the Goddess Conference, which will run from the 29th of July to the 3rd of August. So tickets are still available at goddessconference.com. Please book your ticket, book your accommodation, because it's Glastonbury. There are few places and fewer by the day. So you should have your place already, book your stay, book your ticket, book your flights, and also do that procedure that you need to do in the government thing to enter the UK right now, which the links somewhere at some point. It just takes you, let's say, 10 minutes, and then you receive it in your inbox in an afternoon, and it's like £10. So do that and come to conference in person in Glastonbury, Avalon. This has been a huge topic, and I would love to go on forever, but we need to wrap it up, and we can continue next time, because this has been a great in-depth talk and share discussion. So thank you, Sophia, for being here at so fucking early in the morning. Thank you so much, you're a hero. Thank you, Sophia. Say hi. Okay. Caroline, thank you so
Bye. Bye.
Katinka so much for being here.
Bye,
And
everyone.
thank you, Marion.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jamie.
Bye.
And thank you, Sadhu.
Thanks, folks.
This has been great. And please follow us again. See you next time here at the round table. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Bye.